Hey, good morning, Heartway. I just wanted to take a second here and just welcome you and thank you for joining us at our Heartway home experience. And we just hope that you'll be touched and impacted by every part of our service today. And we just hope you'll just feel an outpouring of God's love just fall over you in your home. So we're just so grateful for you guys, and we cannot wait to hug you guys again. And we just hope that you're all doing well. Love you guys.
Hey Heartway fam, it's Dave here. Today I'd like to lead you guys in a moment of gratitude. A lot of times we tend to link our gratitude to the things that we have or the way we feel, but a lot of the joy that we have in life comes from the people around us in our life. And so for today's moment of gratitude, I'd like you to think of individuals you are most grateful for. And when you get a chance, reach out to them. Tell them how much you love them, and text them, or even give them a shout out on our chat. All right, guys, love you, grateful for this amazing community, and enjoy the service.
I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve, and raise them to glory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Now I can finally see it. You're teaching me how to receive it. So let all the striving cease. Oh, this is my victory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. To have conquered it all. Oh. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated. By the power of your name, I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all.
Happy Sunday, everyone. I am so grateful to be here with you all today. I know that these past couple weeks have been really heavy on all of us, but God is calling on us now more than ever to truly unite. A lot of us believe that heaven is something we experience after this life is done, but heaven is here on earth. We must truly realize and wake up to the fact that we are children of God. No one is exempt from this, but we must see each other as one. We have to see our brothers and our sisters as one together, not divided and not separate. My friends, the work that I want us to do today is true connection. I want you to go deep within yourself. Check what's going on deep within you. All that we can do right now is work deep within ourselves and to pour and shine all of God's love out into this world. So my friends, let's get started. Have a nice, comfortable seated position. Bring the palms either facing up or down. Allow the eyes to close. Slightly tuck the chin. I want you to have a nice, tall spine. Don't allow yourself to slouch. And then together, let's just take a deep inhale. I want you to fill up your belly. You allow this breath to rise up. As the shoulders go back, allow the chest to open up. And then vocally exhale, release. Again, slowly fill up the belly. You allow the breath to rise up. Those shoulders go back. You unclench the jaw and vocally exhale, release. Take a moment now to let go of all the thoughts that are going in and out of your mind. Allow yourself to truly be present in this very moment. Invite your soul to come up. So you allow the personality, you allow the vessel to rest, and instead we welcome the soul by connecting it with its source, God. As you bring your awareness to your breath, I want you to notice what's going on deep within yourself. Notice the emotions that you have been suppressing. Bring awareness to what is going on deep within your soul. No longer worrying about the thoughts going in and out of the mind. Instead, we bring the awareness to the breath, allowing ourselves to be present in this very moment. Invite yourself to surrender a little bit more. Release that which does not serve you. Allow the shoulders to come down. Allow the jaw to unclench. Truly surrender. Feel light and allow God's love to enter your being. Allow it to fill you up. Allow yourself to feel His presence. And as you allow the mind to quiet down, allow God to speak through your heart, through your soul. Surrender it all now to Him. Surrender all the pain that you're feeling. And now call unto God to give you hope, to give you strength, to give you all the love that you need so that you continue being a light worker in this world. Take another moment to take a deep breath. Slowly you inhale the breath, allowing it to rise up. You allow those shoulders to go back. Seal your lips. Exhale through the nose. Settling down, you connect back to your truth. We connect back to our source. We know now that we are not separate from anyone or anything. We are all connected through God's love. We have the choice to wake up to the knowing that we inherently have all of God's love. We have the opportunity to experience His kingdom on this earth. Allow yourself to feel connected. Allow yourself to feel one with God and with all of His children. Don't allow yourself to be caught up by the illusion that you are separate, or that you are less than, or that you are unworthy. For you were created in His image, full of purpose, full of love, fully worthy. Take another moment to just really let it all go. Release the weight that you have on your shoulders. Release the tension that you're holding on to. And let it all go. As you breathe, I want you to inhale, create some space. Open up the chest, allow those shoulders to go back. Seal the lips, hold the breath. And when you're ready to let it all go, exhale, release. Allow God to take the weight, to take the burden that you're holding on to. Allow Him to take this from you now. And allow yourself to be light. Welcome love. Welcome His peace. Welcome His grace into your being. Take this last moment here, my friends, to truly listen to God, to truly listen to that source that you are connected to. And as you connect with your soul, know now that you are always protected, always guided, always loved. Let's bring our left hand to our heart and bring our right hand to our stomach. I want you to feel your heart beating. We all beat, our hearts all the same. We are no different from one another. We all need the breath to live. We all need our heart to continue beating to live. And we all need God's love. Take a deep breath. fill up the belly. Allow the breath to rise up. And with a big smile, my friends, exhale. Let it all go. Releasing the hands back down. Gently invite the eyes to open. My friends, may peace and grace always be with you. Amen. And so much love.
Hey, Heartway family, you all are in for such a treat this weekend because you are about to watch an interview that I was able to have with a friend, a mentor, and somebody who means a lot to me by the name of Brian McLaren. Brian McLaren used to be a pastor. At the time when he was a pastor, he was recognized by Time Magazine as one of the 25 most influential spiritual leaders in America. And he's written a ton of different books. He is an activist, and his theology, his writings have literally reshaped the landscape of Christianity in America during the 21st century. He is one of the premier voices in the progressive Christian movement. In the early 2000s, he helped to start something called the Emerging Church Movement, which you can look up online if you're curious to know what that is. And today, he's going to pour into the Heartway community. I had a blast having this conversation. I've already rewatched it a couple of times, and I know that you're really going to be impacted by this as we discuss a passionate topic for Brian, which is a new kind of Christianity. I hope you enjoy. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. I am here with a very special guest. His name is Brian McLaren. He's an author, a speaker, an activist, and more so than all of that, this human being is somebody who has deeply influenced and impacted my own personal faith practice at a time when I was asking a lot of questions and not having any clear answers. Picking up many of your books, Brian, just made a world of a difference and opened me up to just a whole new way of following Jesus. So I'm glad you're with us, and thank you for taking the time.
Well, it's an honor to be with you. I remember when we first met in person, and I've followed your work ever since, and I have such respect for you and for Heartway. And of course, I'm your neighbor across the state here in Florida. So great to be with you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just your journey with Christianity. You have been known within the Christian world as being, you for a while, you were a very controversial figure, and you were saying a lot of things that not a lot of Christians were used to. Can you just take us through that journey of your life when you started rethinking things and writing more?
Yeah, so I grew up, in what today we would call a fundamentalist setting, although I don't really know today if there's much difference between the word fundamentalist and the word evangelical. I look pretty hard and I can't see a clear distinction. But it was a little group called the Plymouth Brethren. You might have heard of them because Garrison Keillor was with the Plymouth Brethren, Jim Wallace was Plymouth Brethren, and the Plymouth Brethren were the originators of something called dispensationalism. And so if you've read the Left Behind novels, all of that came from Plymouth Brethren. So that was my background. And by the time I was even a young kid, I remember thinking, I was super interested in science. And I remember thinking, gosh, my religion isn't interested in science. And I just thought, I'm on my way out of this. I ended up having a very powerful spiritual experience in my teenage years. Became involved with what was called the Jesus movement, became involved with the charismatic movement. Through that, got involved with a charismatic Episcopal church. So within a few years, I went from, fundamentalist, where we thought we were the only people who were the true church and everybody else was, shaky, to where I just such a wide range of different Christian experiences.
Wow.
I never really planned on becoming a pastor, but my wife and I started a little Bible study that became a house church that then became a larger church. And I pastored that congregation for 24 years. about a little over half of the people who went to our church had, they maybe were baptized Catholic, or, their grandmother was Methodist, but they really had no religious upbringing until they came to our congregation. And so it was a really unique and interesting congregation. And I realized that the forms of Christianity that I had inherited and been introduced to were so far removed from where normal people were. I bet you feel the same thing.
Yes.
And so I started writing about that. And as I look back, I also realized it wasn't just that I was bringing these unchurched people to Christ. These unchurched people were helping me see limitations in the versions of Christianity that I, had been exposed to. And I was learning a lot from them too. And I started writing about that. And, looking back, nothing I was writing about was that controversial. Today, I think a whole lot of people would have no problem with the things I was writing about. There were a few lines I crossed. When I was public about being accepting, inclusive of LGBTQ persons, that upset some people. When I, made friends with a lot of Muslims and Jews and wasn't, stereotyping them and was seeing and treating them as equals, that wasn't a big deal. That was a big deal with some people then, but it isn't really. I hope. I guess it still is with some people. And then when I really started caring about issues of race, issues of the environment, and issues of economic inequality and poverty and structural injustice, I think for some people, they didn't like that, So there have been a few things, but on the other hand, it's just hard for me to imagine how people would still be terribly upset about those things, but obviously some are.
Yeah, and I've always thought about like how grateful I need to be that people like yourself, put yourself out there at a time when it was not popular to say a lot of this stuff, because you're right. I mean, we have evolved a little bit, little by little as a religion and in society as well. But I'm so grateful that people like you were willing to speak up and speak out so that people like me, young guns can come in and say this and stand on your shoulders.
Well, I can't tell you how happy it makes me feel if that's the case. When I was going through this, I think that was beyond my wildest dreams. All I was trying to do is survive. I remember I wrote about this in one of my books called The New Kind of Christian. But I remember one day sitting at a retreat center. I was a pastor. I'd been a pastor, I don't know, 10 years, over 10 years. And I was sitting at a retreat center, had my journal out. I was writing in my journal, 1 year from today, I will be out of the pastorate. And 1 year from today, I may not be a Christian. And so I was just trying to find a way to survive as a Christian and keep my integrity. And the thought that really, I never would have guessed that the ideas that and then I found a few other people, this often is how it goes. You have the courage to express your doubt or the courage to express your question. And then you think you're going to be crucified. And of course, some people throw a few stones. But other people come out of the woodwork and they say, gosh, I thought I was the only one asking this question. I'm so relieved to find somebody else. And, then I say, I'm so relieved to find somebody else. And so the idea that this freedom to ask questions has spread, and people like you and thousands of people have said, you can be a committed Christian and make space for people who have questions and doubts and, see things with different political lenses and so on. I'm very encouraged by that. I mean, we have a lot to be discouraged about right now, but every once in a while, I think we have to say, there's another way that we have made a lot of progress.
And, I think part of what was probably a challenge for so many people as you were writing the things that you were writing in those earlier days has to do with the fact that you were challenging a lot of theological assumptions
Yeah.
that Christians have made, because there's such a intricate connection between
Yes.
what we believe about God and how we're living our lives.
Yes. One of my mentors said, if your ideas about God are wrong and unhealthy, the more devoted you are, the worse off you become. And you know, to be deeply devoted to a deeply dysfunctional understanding of God hurts you, and then you hurt other people. And all of us have done this, I'm afraid to say. But this is why the continual humility and the continual quest to have a bigger and better and deeper understanding of God and life and ourselves, you know, it really is important. Otherwise, we hurt ourselves and we hurt other people. And frankly, it's theologically rooted. We hurt the earth as well. So all of these things are connected. What we believe about God, it's the framework for how we live.
I loved in the Great Spiritual Migration, or what was it called? Is it
the Great Spiritual Migration?
Great Spiritual Migration. Yeah. At the end, you give this vision of the church as a school of love.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
That.
So, you know,
we adopted that language, by the way, at Heartway. I've met it so many times.
I'm so glad to hear that. So I grew up believing that the gospel was an evacuation plan. This world is hopeless. All we're trying to do is get people saved, born again, and, you know, on the rocket ship to go to heaven when they die. And in a way, I know this is a little disparaging, but there's some truth to it. The church ends up being like a warehouse where we're storing up all these souls until we can ship them off to their final destination. So we need an air-conditioned warehouse with a lot of great entertainment and all the rest, right, to keep all the souls from running out and disappearing. And so for me, all of this starts when we say, no, the gospel is not an evacuation plan. The gospel is a transformation plan. We'd say it in the Lord's Prayer whenever we pray, may your will be done on earth as in heaven. The gospel is about transformation. We join with God in the transformation of the world, beginning with ourselves. And that transformation has to begin in each of us. And what we discover is that the most comprehensive vision for our own transformation and the world's transformation is love. You could say it this way. In the scriptures, we start with law. And law is good, but then law leads us to wisdom. So the law we find in the Ten Commandments and Leviticus and so on. Wisdom we find in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and so on. So law leads us to wisdom. Wisdom leads us to social justice. That's what we find in Isaiah and Amos and so on. So now we have law, wisdom, and social justice. And then social justice leads us, those three together lead us to the Holy Spirit, and the primary fruit of the Holy Spirit is love. And so there's this movement. Law is not bad. It's just the starting place. And so if love is what this thing is all about, here's what is a little troubling to think about. After 2,000 years, this religion has invested an awful lot of blood and an awful lot of ink in perfecting its beliefs. But we have not learned very much about how to become loving people, how to help our children become loving people, how to become agents of love in this world. We have an infantile understanding of love and a non-existent, what we might call pedagogy of love, meaning a sense of, look, we know how to teach math. We know more about how to teach math than we know about how to teach love. I mean, none of us would want to go to the hospital and have surgery unless we knew that there were medical schools that really could teach people how to operate on your heart or your brain or whatever. Well, we don't have surgical level knowledge in how do we develop loving human beings. And that's what we need going forward. And here's my belief. My conviction. A lot of people are dropping out of church because it just doesn't seem worth the time and the investment. And also, frankly, some people are worried if they get involved with a church, they'll become a worse person than they were before. In other words, they'll become more judgmental, more racist, more complacent, more selfish, whatever. But if we could make a promise that if you become part of our community, you'll be part of our community where we're all seeking to become the most loving version of ourselves that's possible. And we're all working to help our children become the most loving version of themselves as possible. I think we'd have waiting lists, to get involved with something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now, I want to ask a personal question, because I know that in light of Christian history, like you've just mentioned, so often getting it wrong, in light of all of the damage that has been done in the name of Christianity and fundamentalism, what is it that made you remain a Christian?
Yes,
it's really true, because I mean, a lot of our folks, they don't know you, and they don't know about the stuff that you do in our community, but you got a lot of heat.
Yeah.
There was times where the little bit that I've gotten criticized in my small sphere of influence has already taken me through a whole journey of self-realization and waking up, and I mean, a whole journey.
Yes.
So that's a lot of pain you had to carry, I'm sure. It's not easy when you're trying to do it with good intention. So why did you stay a Christian? Why are you still a Christian?
Yeah. Well, first, you're making me feel really good right now, Danny, because my next book is called Faith After Doubt, which is what we were just talking about. How can our faith survive that kind of questioning? But my book after that I'm actually writing right now is called Do I Stay Christian? So that's exactly the question that I want to grapple with. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Regarding the criticism, some people might know the name of another writer. His name was Dallas Willard. He died a few years ago, but Dallas was one of my mentors and a dear friend, very good to me. And Dallas used to say, all of us want to be good, but we also want to be thought good, thought of as good, right? And he said, we eventually have to make a choice about whether we care more about being thought of as good or actually being good. What happens when our desire to be good leads us to a place where other people say that we're bad?
Wow.
And when I look back, that was the gift of that experience. It really forced me to deal with that in my own motives. Of course, this is what Jesus said. Blessed are you when people persecute you and say all kinds of evil things about you. He saw this. He prepared his disciples for it. People will think they're doing a service to God when they kill you, he said. So that now I realize was an important part of my own growth. And it's probably something all of us go through in one way or another. There were times when I was tempted to give up. But I remember I once said to myself, I've got enough problems already. I don't want to have turning away from God. I don't want to add that to all my other problems. In other words, I never felt freedom in my spirit, freedom in my heart that I was supposed to give up on being a Christian. But I want to say one other thing. I sort of, part of me right now is I want to summarize my whole book to answer your question. But if a person has not seriously wondered about maybe they should stop being a Christian, I think they shouldn't be a Christian. In other words, if you haven't studied Christian history, and if you haven't faced the ugliness of what's being done in the name of Christ today, so much so that it makes you think, how can I stay affiliated with this? Mm-hmm. I don't think you've done your homework. But here's the thing. Let's say I love Christianity. What do I want to become? Any other religion I become, they have their skeletons in their closet too, right?
Yep.
And then I said, well, let me be an atheist. Well, then you find out atheists have a whole lot of problems too. And here's my conclusion now. The deepest problems that Christianity has are human problems. They're problems of what it means to be a human. problems of dealing with our pride, problems of dealing with our fear, problems of dealing with our greed, problems of dealing with our aggression and hostility. And so what I want to do is, what do I want to say? I don't want to be a human being anymore because humans are really a disgusting mess. Well, I don't have that option. I am a human. So what I have to say is maybe the best thing I can do is to be a Christian and try to become the most human, loving, Christ-like Christian. And maybe that would lead to the only other thing I'll say is much more that could be said. But if you say, why do I stay Christian? It's not because of Christianity. It's not because of Christian history. It's because of our founder. And I just think Jesus was right. I honestly think he was right.
Now,
And so for me to stay loyal to Jesus means I want to love everybody. But here's where it gets interesting, Danny, because I want to love all of my fellow Christians, and I want to love all of my Muslim brothers and sisters and neighbors. I want to love all of my Jewish friends, all of my Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, Hindu, atheist friends. I just want to love everybody equally. And the irony is, I don't think that makes me less of a Christian. I think that is what it's all about to be a Christian.
Come on. So that brings me to a very important question that I know you can address with a lot of nuance, which is needed. I have been talking about these things with our Heartway community since we started in 2016. And there are a lot of people that they think it's unfaithful. They feel like it's unfaithful for them to be Christian and to also say we want to be welcoming and affirming of LGBTQ people. We want to, when I talk about Christianity not having a monopoly on truth and recognizing the Spirit of God at work in all of the world's major religious traditions. When I talk about, social justice, there's a lot of Christians who feel that it's being unfaithful to Christianity to do these things because of a Bible verse or because of a belief they may have. So what do you have to say to people like that? Because your vision for life, this beautiful vision for life that you've articulated, is flowing from your commitment to following the Jesus way. So how do you do that? And how can you help us do that?
So can I tell you a quick story to answer that question? You may have heard of a fellow named Ibu Patel. Ibu is a Muslim activist who started something called Interfaith Youth Corps. And they bring together Jews, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, atheists, all kinds of people to serve the poor and the needy together, believing that if people serve together, they discover things about each other. It's a beautiful organization, and I love Ibu dearly. The first time we met, we've become deep friends since then, but the first time we met, we had this conversation. We met in a certain place, and then we both had to go. So I walked him to his car. But we were so deep in conversation that he walked me to my car and then I walked him back to his car. Our conversation couldn't end. I said to him, Ibu, you Muslims have a big advantage over us Christians when it comes to getting along with people of other faiths. He looked at me, what do you mean? I said, every time I talk to a Muslim, they quote a verse from the Quran that says, where God says, we made you different so that you would seek to understand one another. I said, that's such a beautiful verse where God gives us a mission to be, God made us different on purpose so we would seek to understand each other. And I said, but whenever I talk to a Christian about loving people of other faiths, they quote John 14:6. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And Ibu laughed. And he said, believe me, Brian. He says, I know you've read the Quran, so you know this. There are a lot of other verses in the Quran that could be quoted that would be a lot less friendly than the one that you've heard quoted. And then he said, and I bet there are a lot of verses in the Bible that could be quoted that would be a lot more friendly than the way they quote John 14:6. And then Ibu said something I'll never forget. He said, why do you think it is, Brian? I mean, he's such a good teacher. He just asked me the perfect question. Why do you think it is, Brian, that Muslims quote one verse and Christians quote one verse, their verse. I thought about it. I said, well, it's because their teachers taught them that's the verse you should quote.
Wow.
And I said, well, there it is. So let's just take John 14:6. Jesus, first of all, if you read John 14:5, it doesn't say, and Philip came to Jesus and said, what about people of other religions who have never heard of you? You know, it's not the question Jesus is answering. And if you really read that in context, something very different is going on. So John 14:6, I think, is misapplied as an answer to that question. If anybody's interested, I have a little ebook about this on my website, brianmclaren.net. It's just called "Is Jesus the Only Way?" It's an in-depth study of that verse. But here's the thing:
your other book was great too.
Why did Jesus, Moses, the Buddha, and Muhammad cross the road? Which is a book I talk about this issue in great detail. But here's the thing. Let's imagine if somebody said to me, what should our attitude be toward people of other religions? And what if my teachers had taught me to quote 1 John 4, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Whoever says he loves God and hates his brother is a liar. What if our teachers had taught us that's the first go-to verse on that question? We would just behave very differently. It would be a very different situation. And that's, to me, our great challenge and opportunity for people like you and me. It's why I'm so grateful, to you for the great job you're doing as a teacher, to help people find a new way and better ways to respond.
For sure. So speak to us a little bit about your passion for social justice and the connectedness that has to your faith. Because, now is the time to talk about this.
It really is. So look, I'd encourage anybody who loves the Bible, go to Luke chapter 4 and read Jesus' inaugural sermon. And he quotes the prophet Isaiah, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Boy, Pentecostals, charismatics should love this verse because it's about the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. And he doesn't say to speak in tongues and to dance in the aisles and to slay people in the Spirit and to proclaim prosperity so everybody can get rich. No, the Spirit of God is upon me to proclaim good news to the poor, recovery of sight to the blind, to proclaim liberty to the captives, to the imprisoned, to the incarcerated, and good news to the oppressed, and so that the oppressed can be liberated. I mean, what a powerful verse. It's about social justice. The Holy Spirit empowers us to care about poverty, to care about oppression, to care about incarceration, exactly the issues that we face today. Read Acts chapter 16, where Paul and Silas come into Philippi. The first time the gospel of Jesus Christ is proclaimed on Roman territory, on a Roman colony. And they come in, and what do? They start with the lowest person on the totem pole. First, women are put in lower position than men in the Roman world. It's a woman, and it's a poor slave girl, and they help a slave girl after they've already built a relationship with some spiritually open women, and a woman is actually the leader of that community. And then they confront the magistrates. They actually have a sit-in. It's right there in Acts chapter 16. They have a sit-in in the jail, and they practice civil disobedience. They refuse to leave the jail until they receive an apology from the magistrates for their unjust beating. So it's everywhere in the Bible. It's just that many of us were trained not to see it. And it's what's going on in our world today. This country is a country built on the genocide of one peoples, the Native Americans, a land theft and genocide, and on the enslavement of another group of people, kidnapped Africans. Virtually 100% of the slave owners were Christians. They'd show up in church every Sunday, singing songs, praising God, thanking God for being forgiven, and then go back on Monday to beating and raping and abusing and exploiting these human beings made in the image of God, and they felt fine about it. And when they were confronted about it, they defended it using the Bible. I mean, that's the history of this religion in this country. And the question is, when are we going to address it? When are we going to address the theological roots of the racism in this country? I think you could say that colonialism, which affected North America, Central America, South America, affected Africa, affected huge parts of Asia. It is a global phenomenon. Colonialism was a Christian project launched by Pope Nicholas V in 1452, defended by Protestants and Catholics alike. And it's time for us now to have our hearts purified and to rediscover the radical, revolutionary, healing good news of Jesus Christ that tells us every single person is equal. Every single person is beloved by God, and God has God is non-discriminatory. Oh my goodness, what good news that is.
Are you still preaching?
Sorry, I was going at it there, but no, I don't preach too often, but.
Well, we're going to have to change that and have you come to Heartway at some point and get us all riled up, because this will.
I would love it.
This will get something going. Wow. Well, I'm with you 100% on all of this, and I know that there have been, and maybe you can bring this to light a little bit, not just to paint the history and tradition of Christianity in that negative light.
Yes.
But there have been voices.
Yes.
The minority, though, but there have been voices within the Christian community for centuries that have had this vision for the world. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then also,
I'm so glad you bring that up. Go ahead. What was your other question?
And then also, I know that you're very in touch right now with a lot of different communities, and I wanted just to hear from you about what they're saying about this cultural moment we're in.
Yes. So, oh my goodness, what great questions, Danny. So, remind me, what was your first question again?
So the first one is basically to talk about those other streams within Christianity that have stood for this.
So I do not know if, I'm pretty sure what I'm about to tell you is 100% true. That somebody might be able to tell me of one or two examples. But as far as I know, last time I was able to check, the very first person in the history of the human race who we have a statement from condemning slavery was St. Patrick. Wow. And St. Patrick, early centuries of Christianity, it's seen by some as one of the founders or one of the key figures of Celtic Christianity. Was one of the first to say that slavery is evil and against the will of God. What a remarkable, and he was a slave, and he escaped, and then he went back to Ireland where he had been held as a slave to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ to the very people who had been his slave masters. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful story. And then you fast forward a few centuries to St. Francis in about 1200. And St. Francis saw the corruption of the church and saw the violence of the church. For the 100 or so years before St. Francis, the church had really gone on a violent rampage. There were these different groups called the Waldensians, the Albigensians, several others. They were in some ways the forerunners of the Protestant Reformation. The church just crushed them and killed them. And the church was practicing torture for people to tell people, you have a false belief. We're going to torture you until you confess the truth. I mean, this sounds absurd to us today. The church had this violent streak, and St. Francis modeled nonviolence. He had the courage to be different, but he did it with nonviolence. He even walked in, the church was having what we call the Crusades, wars with Muslims. And he walked into the camp of the Egyptian leader unarmed as a representative of a nonviolent Christian. I mean, what a hero St. Francis is in so many ways. I mean, there are so many great examples in our history. And in some ways, we need to rediscover them and celebrate them in a fresh way. Let me just tell you, in regard to your second question, one of the greatest joys of my life is I have many dear friends who are rabbis, many dear friends who are Muslim leaders. And what is striking is how they're facing the same struggles that we are. I have a friend who's a rabbi, and she wrote something years ago where she said, it was right after the Israeli government had bombed Gaza and killed a bunch of children. And she said, I believe I'm being true to my Jewish faith to say that the heart of God is as grieved over the death of a Palestinian child as God is grieved over the death of a Jewish child. Now I think she's right. I think that's courageous. I think it's true. Did you know she received death threats from fellow Jews, threats against her children from her fellow Jews? So that tells you that similar problems that we have in Christianity, they have in Judaism. I have Muslim friends who've told me exactly the same thing. So these struggles that we have are happening across religions. And what, to me, I dare to believe is that the Spirit of God is calling people to not let their religions become instruments of hate and exclusion and separation, but is calling people of our religions to follow the way of love. Interestingly, when you talk in those terms and you talk about Jesus as a leader of love, I was with a rabbi once. I'll never forget, we were sitting in the balcony of his apartment in Los Angeles, and he said to me, look, Brian, I think the way you talk about Jesus, I think Jesus was from God and Jesus was right. I think he was a Jewish prophet, and it was a mistake of us to not listen to him. I mean, when you let Jesus as a messenger of love speak for himself, you find out that you find out it's just a different world.
That's so good, Brian. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing with us, and I value you and your voice so much, and I'm looking forward to continuing our friendship. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for impacting me, because your influence in my life has now reverberated into the lives of everyone who's connected to our community at Heartway. So thank you.
Well, thanks be to God. Such a pleasure to be with you. Look forward to getting together in person.
All right.
Hey, Heartway Church fam. I want to say that we really do miss you, seeing your faces in Heartway. I know I miss hugging you all, being able to see you guys. Andrew, what do you miss about Heartway?
Our Heartway Church leaders.
You miss Heartway kids?
Yes.
And I know Amelia misses all her friends in the daycare as well. But we want to say thank you so much for still continuing to join us at Heartway at Home. It's been amazing. One thing we do want to say is make sure you stay connected with us, guys, on all our social media platforms. In addition to that, we want to thank all the first-time guests that have joined us today. And if you are a member of our Heartway Church family and are still able to give, keep in mind that there are 2 ways that you can give here at Heartway. Two ways that you can give here at Heartway Church. The first way will be heartwaychurch.com, safe and secure site. And then the second way will be texting the dollar amount for 84321. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.